Hello everyone, my name is Fatima Mahmood. Welcome back to my channel. Let's discuss how I network with people digitally. This video reflects my own views and opinions, no one else's, and it's not been pre-approved or endorsed by any federal agency or other employer, academic program, or membership association. The word network means so many things nowadays. You can think of a social network, social media network. You can think of systems networks like in computers, but I'm talking about networking with people in a more authentic sense and not just in the superficial sense. It may also seem odd to start a video about networking and talking about it from the digital perspective. But ironically, I think it's important to realize that nowadays, one of the main ways you meet live human beings is through digital tools. So that's what I'm hoping to cover. While the target audience for this video is current federal employees, I'm sure the information can be helpful and relevant to people in other types of government like local and state, as well as people in different sectors of the economy like nonprofit and private sector. You've heard me say this before in various videos, but the internet is full of information. If you want specific tips on how to network with people, different methodologies, Google is always available to you. You have more than your fair share of articles and tips and opinions about networking, steps to network, types of questions to ask that are out there. The challenge becomes for you, 1, taking it all in, processing it, 2, figuring out what works for you, and figuring out what you agree with, and lastly, other things that you're exposed to that are different and new for you that you never thought of before, which ones are you going to try out? So I'm sharing my tips and I'll try to contextualize everything and be specific, but you can find articles out there that agree with me, and you can find articles out there that disagree with the tips I'm about to share with you. So one of the first ways in which I network digitally with people is when I'm reading substantive information electronically. So this could be career related, it could be related to paralegal, it could be related to the legal profession, or it could be general knowledge development. This isn't just scrolling through social media, it's reading something substantive and for my future development. So this could be articles, online PDFs that are substantive articles, ebooks, professional newsletters, professional magazines. And as I'm reading, if an author wrote a piece that I really like, I will look up that author on LinkedIn. If the article is about a person or it names several people that I find interesting, I will find them also on LinkedIn. I'll send them a connection request, and many of you are already familiar with LinkedIn. There's always an option when sending the request to send a note. I always try to send a note saying why I want to connect if I've never met them, which is generally the case what I'm talking about here. I'm reading something and I've never met the author, but I want to build a connection with the author. So sometimes the authors do include their email, like if you're reading a news outlet article online or newspaper, or some type of journalism online. Nowadays, the authors will have their professional emails there and their social media handles, so you can contact someone like that directly. I mean, that information is there for you to use to contact them directly. So if I have that email, I'll email them directly, and sometimes with some authors, you can just Google them and then you'll find an email address. So whether I'm doing a LinkedIn connection request or an email, I have a habit that I use. I tell people why I liked what they wrote professionally, and I try to be specific in like one sentence. And then generally I might end with, I hope we meet in person, or I hope we meet in the future. And one of the benefits of sending that type of note within LinkedIn is that if they do accept my connection request, then in the future, each time I open up my messages with that person, the date that I sent the connection request will always be saved. And then the message itself is a little reminder to me of how I connected with that. If I'm not mistaken, and tell me if I'm wrong, email me, post in the comments. LinkedIn used to have LinkedIn tags that you can attach to people. So if I went to conference A and I connected with 10 people on LinkedIn from that conference. By meeting them there, I would tag them all with, conference A. And at least for the free version, that somehow went away. So if you heard differently for the free version, message me. So sometimes people are not on email at all, and sometimes people are not on LinkedIn, so it's a dead end. But most people near urban areas of all size, you can find them through LinkedIn and through Google searches. So I'm able to do what I previously described in terms of cold contacting someone, cold emailing, or even cold calling people, is because I started to work in offices when I was a teenager, 13 years old. And in that time in the workplace, in office workplaces, it was way before people used email even a little bit, and people, had answering machines, or they were just starting to use voicemails in the office. So it was one of my necessary skill sets to develop, is how to cold email someone once email started up in the workplace, and to cold call people. So call people I know nothing about or very little about, call people I've never met and ask them for something, or convey information to them, or ask them for information. The alternative to that was there would be sort of what's a lack of a warm opening, so no one would introduce me beforehand and say, hey, this person's going to call you. So it was just one of those skill sets I had to develop of no introductions, no warm openings, just cold calling and cold emailing people. Bringing things back to the COVID and post-COVID world, nowadays we have a lot of events or meetings or presentations or webinars that we attend virtually, or they're on video conference. So I could be attending something, there are panelists who are speaking, there's a single speaker or a series of single speakers back to back. And there can even be, in these platforms, one of them is just Zoom, I'm sure there are others, that show a participant list. So if I like the panelists, the speakers, generally it's easy to find them via Google or via LinkedIn. And just like with the articles, I'll mention that I liked the event. I mentioned I like what they said, and hopefully we can meet in the future. Same goes if there was a moderator or a group or an organization that organized the virtual event, I would contact them and say that I appreciated their work. I appreciated them putting this event together. I think when you have a person organizing it or an organization putting together these events, they appreciate feedback like that, not just plugs on social media, but also, direct messages saying why people liked it. I know that I've liked that kind of feedback when I've helped organize events. So sometimes these virtual or video conference platforms allow you to see the participants list. Sometimes they're blocked to protect the privacy and identity of all the attendees. Sometimes people show their full name on the participant list. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's just a phone number if they're calling in just on the phone. The more you can see someone's whole name, the easier it is to find people online, because you never know what can happen when you reach out to someone. You never know who you already have in common. You never know what can happen in the future in terms of opportunities or conversations or information sharing. If I see the participant list and I see the names and the number seems like a manageable number, like not 50 or in the hundreds, and I really like this group of people, I will note their names and I will search for them on LinkedIn. Again, I always send a note with the connection request saying how I got their name from the virtual event, from the participant list, and that we both attended the event. There shouldn't be any sort of real surprise. There should be an explanation as to how I found this person's name. Sometimes, just to be aware, during these larger events that are virtual too, the organizers may turn off the chat. So you can't always see a name or see someone make a chat comment. You want to respond to that person to get to know them better or follow up on what they said because the chats are blocked. My next digital networking habit is I maintain a workplace list. This is a list of everyone I work with directly. Sometimes it's a spreadsheet. Sometimes I use one Google contact card and I add people's names just in the notes section, and just next to their name I can, if I happen to have their personal email or personal phone number, I'll put it there. This saves me from having to create individual contact cards for everyone, because I've worked for many years and I've had many work colleagues. So sometimes if I'm in a place for a long period of time, even though the definition of long period of time working somewhere has changed over the last 20, 30 years, I will keep a list of everyone's name who's worked in my office or my group, even if I've not directly collaborated with them. So this is because, again, you never know where people will go in the future, you never know where you're going to go in the future, and you never know who you're going to encounter who knows someone from your past that you've worked with. And you never know when you're going to work with these folks again. So definitely, if I start a new place, or if I'm already at a place and someone new comes on board, an announcement is made about them, I'll add my work colleagues to LinkedIn. Sometimes also LinkedIn helps you remember like when this person started or where you met this person. Oh, you met them when they started at the same place as you. And sometimes it doesn't help you remember that, because people can, LinkedIn profile is user inputted data. So maybe someone can, hide one of their workplaces if, it was many years ago they worked with you. They just let it drop off. And they try to keep their LinkedIn profile very limited to recent years. They record everyone's names, but you don't have to. I encourage you to create your own parameters for how you're going to manage a workplace list that are realistic for both your personality, which is going to motivate you to do it, and for your lifestyle, which is going to determine how much time you have to spend on this. Talk more about LinkedIn, even though I know it's not the only way people connect professionally with each other. So a big question for you to think about in terms of your LinkedIn profile is if you can see your connections, and if you allow your connections to see your connections. So this definitely relates to your first or second degree people, your contacts. Your first degrees are people you've already accepted, and second degrees are people who know your first degrees, but you aren't connected with them yet. So do you allow people to see each other, or do you not? It's a personal choice. People have to figure out what works for them. But one thing that you should do from time to time as you're adding people to LinkedIn in an authentic manner and not just collecting contacts is you should, in your connection section, do keyword searches and see how people are related to each other, and to see what type of places people are working with, because people change jobs in shorter time frames now. Where people are changes quicker than you can remember when someone changed a job. So if I see that one of my first contacts knows another one of my first contacts, and it's like not from the same school, not from the same workplace, but the connection seems a little surprising, I will initiate a conversation. I'll message them and say, oh, I saw you know this person, who I also know, like, how do you know that person? And you just let that conversation flow naturally. Another thing that happens is someone will come to me and they say, do you know someone at this company or in this field, in this industry? If I remember, great, and I can just give that information off the top of my head. But if I don't remember, I will make sure that that person who's asking me is already a first connection on LinkedIn, and then I'll tell them, go look through my connections, do keyword searches in my connections, and see if anyone fits for what you're looking for. So then I make email introductions between people, for people. And I ask people to do the same thing. I might say, hey, I see you know X person. Here's an email I wrote to them. Would you be comfortable forwarding this email to them? And again, the outcomes could be someone says yes, someone says no, or no one responds. All those things are fine, but at least you're trying. Another key thing to discuss here is, again, protections. Like I mentioned with, do you let people see your connections or do you not? And I made a choice that because I want to reveal my connections to my other connections, I then made sure that no one can send me a connection request without knowing my personal email. I was getting too many random requests, and I didn't want to be bothered by connection collectors. And so if you don't know my email, you'll not be able to send me a connection request. And as I described, about forwarding emails, instead of asking for people's email address, that's another way that I protect my connections. Instead of someone says, hey, can you connect me with Joe Smith? Instead of giving Joe Smith's email, I'll say, write an email to Joe Smith, and I'll send it to me and I'll forward it. Let's discuss different types of apps. So because I work in federal investigations, I'm very leery about apps. I'm very leery about downloading too many. I say in comparison to what young people are doing, and I'm hesitant to add too many. But one thing I will do is, if I'm going to a multi-day conference, definitely more than one day, and it's a big conference or something, or a big event, I will put the LinkedIn app on my phone, and then I will later on delete it. But I will use the app very deliberately during the big meetings or the events in the conference. So if I'm going through the conference, I'm networking, I'm chatting in person with people, I'll use a few minute downtimes, like before panels start, before speeches start, and I'll add people right there while I'm in the room. And I found a lot of times people are also using the app, and they'll accept very quickly just on their phone. I generally would not do this, if it was a smaller event. And I've been to multi-day conferences where the conference has its own specific app, and that will show like attendee list, conference material, speaker information, venue information. And so the thing with the attendee list is that the attendees can voluntarily input more of their personal information, like their photo, their LinkedIn link, their work information, their interest, but all of that is voluntary user input, and people may not have time, especially if they're traveling for the conference. So even if I find attendees on the attendee list inside the app, and there are ways to favorite them or star them or save those names, I will definitely also make sure I'm transferring those names over to LinkedIn and finding those same people on LinkedIn. Just always remember that every single piece of technology that you acquire, every new app, means a new piece of technology that you do need to learn, even if this technology is very similar to other technology you're used to using. So you have to think about if you want to invest that time in learning about that new technology, or do you want to use something that you're already familiar with and spend that time, having clear notes about the people you've met, why you find them interesting, and where they work that might be interesting to you. And always remember that not all tech is intuitive to all people, even if people use tech every day of their lives. Another aspect of digital networking, or networking digitally, is you can join professional membership organizations where you pay dues to become a part of the organization. And it could be based on just the profession, like I've been part of paralegal associations, or it can be an affinity group like this one, the Capital Area Muslim Bar Association, CAMBA. Here's their website that you can visit. And I want to give hat tip kudos to CAMBA because I think they have a couple of great features on their website. One, you can't see it publicly, but if you log in as a dues paying member, they have a membership directory. And you can see a whole list of all current dues paying members. So it also means you can see a numeric tally of all the members for that particular year. The fields are really simple. I'm not going to show you their fields because that's proprietary information, but it's very simple, like first name, last name, workplace, job title, a little bit about education, their email address, and I don't believe that the email address is hideable. I believe these are all mandatory fields that users must input, in particular when the membership website is also a vehicle to pay dues and to pay for the cost of attending events or registration fees. There is a way in the system, which I think is really unique, that I don't think enough people talk about. is you see someone's email address or you see someone's name and you just click on it, and it automatically opens a messaging feature within the website. So you can just contact that person directly, and it'll go to their email on file, so you don't have to copy it over to your own email software. So annually around dues time, I will locate everyone from the CAMBA directory on LinkedIn. So it's a very manual process, but again, it's an investment of time. We'll search by first name, last name, and some of the biographical information, like where they're working or their school they went to, and I'll try to find them on LinkedIn. And the note that I'll send is, saw you in the CAMBA directory. If I can't find them on LinkedIn, which is very rare for legal professionals in the DMV area, I will email them in the system saying I want to introduce myself as a fellow CAMBA member. If you ever use LinkedIn in the future, feel free to add me, and I give them my LinkedIn profile link. So one thing I'd like to see in the future in this type of membership directory is a separate field for people to input their LinkedIn profile link. I think that in the DMV, most white-collar professionals would have a LinkedIn profile, and this field with this link would save time for searching by first name, last name, etc. You just see that link, you're already logged in on your web browser to LinkedIn, and you click on the profile link, and it just takes you there, and you can send someone a connection request with that note. This also saves you time from weeding out similar names in similar professions. When you're clicking on the link, you know it's that person. You're contacting the correct person. I'll use another example of another professional affinity group membership that has a directory, and that was the Women's Bar Association of the District of Columbia. Here's their website where you can check it out. And on one of their membership pages, they talk openly about their member directory. CAMBA I don't think put that explicit of a notice that they have a membership directory, but here's a good brief description. And last time I used this directory, I would say that the fields are much more extensive. So there are many more fields where the user can input data. And so a trade-off of that, if there's too many fields, the users can lose motivation to spend time entering in all that information. That's why I like the idea of having just one field for their LinkedIn profile link, because it allows people to easily go to a place where these people have already inputted their information about their career and their professions. Say you are part of a membership professional organization, you are paying dues, and of course and hopefully you are going to in-person events where you're meeting with people and networking and getting people's names and information so you can connect with them. The benefit of the membership directory is that in reality it's not possible to meet everyone in an organization at an event. So when I proactively find people on LinkedIn and I tell them we're both part of the same organization, it creates an opportunity to potentially network outside of an event. We could have a video call, a phone call, or if we're already connected on LinkedIn and we see each other at the event, it's another conversation starter. It's another easier way to get to know people. So that's my reason for liking membership directories, where you can easily find people if you happen to not be able to attend an in-person event, or there's a global health pandemic going on and people aren't able to meet in person. Another way to network digitally is through alumni databases. So some high schools may have a proprietary database. And this goes beyond just, people found each other through Facebook and created, their own group, or they use some other social media platform and, they found each other. And I think more and more colleges and universities are having proprietary alumni databases that can be accessed through a web browser. So I want to discuss with two networking experiments that I did with my college alumni database. So the first one was my paralegal experiment. In my college alumni directory, we have a way to search by profession as a drop-down list, and you can filter by that field in that drop-down list. There's also an occupation field where you can manually type in your job title. And I did a keyword search first by the profession field and then by occupation or job title. I did a keyword search for paralegal. So the results that came up were every college alum who ever self-reported that she worked or works as a paralegal in any of the jobs that she chose to list. So for all of them who revealed their email address and made it visible, I emailed them. And with the standard message of, I just thought to try to reach out to all alums who had been paralegals at some point. They may still be paralegals, and just wanted to network professionally with them. Some email addresses bounced back. Some people did receive my email, and we started having communications. We would share our experiences in the profession. I've gotten to the point where I did some video conferences with folks, and we shared our stories extensively. There would be other times where I'd get the hit results and no email was visible, but an address was visible. So I hand wrote them a message on a very large postcard. I put my name, I put my email, I put my return address on those cards so they could contact me. And I felt okay. I didn't feel like putting that information would put me in any jeopardy or cause me any headaches. Some postcards were sent back as undeliverable because obviously it's user inputted data in terms of address and contact information, and people can move and not update it. Some replied via email about their career stories and their professional trajectories, their observations of changes in the legal field, how lawyers have changed, how the work has changed due to technology. And some very nice people emailed me to say, this person no longer lives here. I got your card and I shredded it, but I just wanted to send you an email so you knew about it. So these are all the trade-offs of having a user inputted data system that's completely voluntary. People forget to update, or they don't want to update the information. The second experiment I did in the Alumni College database was a location experiment. I searched the same database by the city field, and I'm putting quotes around cities because not everyone lives in a city. In the city field in the address section. I live in an unincorporated town, so my area isn't necessarily huge. And then I got the search results for everyone who also said they lived in that city area, that unincorporated town. And I emailed every single person who had listed their city as the same as mine and made their emails visible. I didn't do handwritten things. Some emails bounced back. Some people wrote to say they moved away and hadn't updated their data. And others, we connected, we met up in person, we had a meal together, and we talked about our experience at the college and our experience living in the same area. So my goal with all of this was just to try these two types of digital networking experiment and see how far they would go. These were also really good lessons on a skill development, which is return on investment. For every 5 distinct emails or people you try to reach out to, your return, like the people that you actually connect with, could be very low. But I encourage you to keep at networking so long as you know what your networking goals are and you know how much time you actually want to invest. Sometimes you just have to be very patient with this. So in terms of your networking goals, you can have a lot of them, but some of them can be put into a couple of categories or buckets. Are you doing this? Are you networking to have superficial relationships with people just to advance your career? Or are you doing this to have deeper, meaningful relationships and also develop your career? Do you want to only have digital relationships with people that you meet? Or do you want to have one-on-one meetings with them in person or over video conference? Do you want one, the other, or do you want to be somewhere in the middle or in between on this spectrum? The key thing is for you to figure out where you want to be on the spectrum with different people. The next digital networking tip and skill that I want to discuss is following up with people. So people may think other people know how to do this. People know how to follow up with people. But I noticed that this is becoming a diminishing skill set among people, particularly younger demographics. So following up with people should become a very natural networking skill. You do have to resend initial messages that you've sent. Sometimes you send a message and someone responds pretty quickly. That's great. I generally give people 1 week to respond to me. And if I really feel that it's pressed for time and I need to discuss something urgently with them, I will make that clear in my initial message, and then I'll follow up 2 days exactly. So I mean 1 week exactly or 2 days exactly. So if it's 3 p.m. on a Friday and it's not urgent that I connect with this person, I'll wait till 3 p.m. the next Friday to resend the email. If it is urgent, then in 2 days at exactly 3 p.m., I will follow up with that person. And so it's important not just to say to yourself, oh, I emailed or I messaged this person once and they never got back to me. I believe that 2 is the minimum. It's the new minimum for the game. And there could be a lot of reasons. So at any point, your email can be routed to spam. My email address gets routed to spam at times. People can be delayed because they're busy or they have another issue going on. It could even be health related. So give people time, but you also have to develop the skill of consistently following up with people. In a future video, I might discuss tips on networking with people in person. If you watch my video on informational interviews, some of that covers this particular topic, but I could do something much broader. But I do want to end on digital networking by talking about a tip that intersects digital and in-person networking. So when I go to an in-person event, I always take my business card with me. Sometimes people ask for my business card, sometimes I give it out. I also ask people for their business cards. These people might have forgotten to bring one, or they might be running low. I try to take pictures of paper business cards because if I keep the paper, I'll likely lose it and forget it, versus if I keep the picture on my phone, I'm more likely to contact that person. And if someone has completely forgotten their business card or running low, and this is an event where people have name badges, first name, last name, maybe their profession will be on it, maybe where they work will be on it, I will take a picture of their badge and save it, and that's how I'll find them later on. When we discuss professional networking, we're talking about building connections and relationships with live human beings. So it can seem counterintuitive that a first video that I do on networking is about how you do it digitally. But in today's world, the way we start to meet people can often be more doing it digitally than in real life. So I hope these tips have been helpful to you and that you increase your networking skills and you expand your network with these tips. Thank you for watching my video. I'd love to hear from you on email at fmahmood@wellesley.edu. You can also find me on LinkedIn at that address. And if you do send me a connection request, please go ahead and send me a note. Before you go, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate it. And please go ahead and watch my next video. Thank you.